Sports Radio 95.9 The Fan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nach on Sports podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Alan Zlotorzynski to talk some NFL, get his thoughts on the season opener last night between the Seahawks and the Pack. Alan Zlotorzynski, who lives on the Space Coast and writes for fanspeak.com, has his own blog and podcast. You can definitely check him out. You can check him out on Twitter at @ZLotSports. We're discussing the Week 1 matchups and talking about the quarterbacks around the NFL and what he's looking for in Week 1. So let's get to our guest. Alan, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so pumped up and ready to go. Week 1 of the National Football League. Thank goodness it was a short off season. At least it felt that way anyway.
I was telling Mark the other day, and I was thinking about that. I wish the NFL had as short an off season as the NBA did. Because if you think about it, the NBA finishes up in June. They're already getting ready for the new season in October. I wish the NFL off season was that short.
I completely agree. And I think the day is coming soon to when we will see something in this country anyway, not like an NFL Europe, when they have a league that the NFL does during the off season that I think will keep us occupied until the guys hit the field in September.
I think that would be great because I'll tell you what, I can never get enough football. And like you said, I couldn't wait for last night. I mean, I couldn't sit still at work. I couldn't wait till we had kickoff around. It was set about 8:30, but we didn't get started till about 8:40 last night.
It was amazing. Last year, my Ravens kicked off to start the season, and we had a lightning delay. It was like an hour and a half lightning delay, and I thought, really, this is not good. So at least they got it off on time last night, and off we go. Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about what you're doing. I know you're an NFL writer for fanspeak.com. You have so many podcasts, and you're such a busy man. What's it like being Alan Zlotorzynski during the week?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've got 4 beautiful children, a great wife that's very, very patient. She happens to be an NFL football fan herself, so I'm blessed there. It's a day job, and then it's home, football practice for the little one, and then straight to the computer to do the podcasting, booking guests, writing blogs. It's a lot of fun. It keeps me busy. The only problem is the season flies by.
Oh, I believe it. That's the unfortunate part. We get to Week 1, and then something happens, and we're already at the wild card weekend. We're here with Alan Zlotorzynski of fanspeak.com. You can check him out on Twitter at @ZLotSports. Great stuff. I saw everything that you have on there. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the NFL, and among other topics, I know you talk a little bit about the college football as well, or you're a Ravens guy. And yesterday they unveiled the Ray Lewis statue, and I love the pose that they did for the statue. I just want to get your thoughts on Ray Lewis's statue outside of Baltimore Stadium.
Yeah, I like the pose too. I'm going to be honest with you, and I am absolutely in the minority on this. I thought it was a bit too soon, to be honest with you, for the statue. But I guess when you're talking about, what many consider arguably the greatest middle linebacker to ever play the game, you'll get the arguments about Dick Butkus, et cetera. But, it was great for the fans. It was great for Ray Lewis. Great for the city of Baltimore. Look, Ray's a guy that's forever going to live on in that town's lore as one of its beloved sports legends. He's up there with Brooks Robinson. He's up there with Johnny Unitas. And, of course, number 8, Cal Ripken Jr. It's a great thing. The squirrel dance, as he called it, is what he was known for before the game. I would have liked to have seen the pose be, a football pose, but, we can't have everything.
We're here with Alan Zlotorzynski of fanspeak.com. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at @ZLotSports. Great follow on Twitter. Funny you bring that up because I was thinking the same thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that pose, but at the same time, that's going to be around for a long, long time. You kind of want to think, maybe they should have gone with something a little more simplistic, maybe, or
yep.
What kind of pose would you think? Just having the helmet, kind of like that old, Vince Lombardi type, where he's just got that coat on or the helmet on the side?
Well, yeah, something like that. And you know what? You've been to a couple of stadiums around the National Football League. I mean, there are stadiums that actually have what I was hoping I would see anyway. And you could have kept it simple with this. Probably one of his greatest tackles ever came against the San Diego Chargers a couple of years ago. 4th and goal. The Chargers were driving down to either a first down or a touchdown to win the game. And Lewis bust through the line and jacked up one of the Chargers running backs and drilled him to the ground. I'd like to see him with a guy, his arms wrapped around a running back, drilling him to the ground, because that's what made Ray Lewis.
Absolutely, totally agree there. And I remember that. That was an awesome play. I mean, like I said, Ray Lewis, you're definitely right. One of the best to ever play the game. I'll definitely say the greatest to play in his generation. Obviously, you can have a lot of arguments for, like you said, a lot of other players throughout the history of the NFL. But let's move on to, let's get your thoughts about last night. Like we said, we finally got the NFL kickoff game last night between the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks. What did you leave with last night after watching that game? Were you blown away by the Seahawks' performance?
I was absolutely blown away. Here's what blew me away. I expected the play from the defense. That's a fantastic defense. That secondary, the Legion of Boom, the safeties back there, Earl Thomas, of course, it's got Richard Sherman. But the thing that I think is going to present the problem for everybody this year is, boy, did Russell Wilson certainly look like he elevated his game. You look at the stats last night. They're not imposing in terms of, I don't even think he passed for 200 yards last night, but he played perfect football. He didn't make any mistakes. He made the Packers pay. I mean, every type of an offense or every type of a defense that the Packers, Dom Capers, threw at him, he had an answer for it. And that was Russell Wilson. And if Russell Wilson plays as he did last night for the rest of the season, this is going to be a long year for everybody on their schedule.
No, I agree. And like I said, I think Russell Wilson's poised to break out this year. Now, the question still remains, will he become that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning kind of quarterback? Well, we'll find out the rest of the season. But Russell Wilson looks awfully impressive. And you almost kind of feel bad for the Pack a little bit because they keep running into the NFC West, and that just seems to keep stonewalling them. It was San Francisco the last few years. Now it looks like it's probably going to be the Seattle Seahawks now.
Yeah, the Green Bay Packers starting to get it right in that, my favorite stat from last year in the National Football League was that only two teams finished the year throwing or running the football more than they threw it. And those two teams, and not by coincidence, happened to be the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. In my opinion, the two best teams in the National Football League last year. So the Green Bay Packers are starting to get it right in this respect, turning to Eddie Lacy as they did last night early on. And they had success with that running game early on. I felt like that Lacy was able to chip away at the middle of that Seahawks defense, because if there is a slight hole in that defense, it is up the middle. But they just simply couldn't sustain it, and they couldn't keep up. And I guess when you have as physical as that defense is, I like to say, and I guess it's because I'm a homer, that they play that AFC North physical-style defense. And in fact, I was talking to former Ravens linebacker and 49er linebacker Tavares Gooden last night, and we were watching the game, and he was commenting to me. He said, it's interesting because when I went to Seattle to play, one of the things that we tried to implement out there was to take that punch-you-in-the-mouth style defense. Well, it certainly looks like the 49ers have it, and they just wore out the Packers' running game with it.
No, you're right there. They did, and that was the thing. And it looked like to me the turning point in that game was the third quarter. Where Seattle got a bunch of points after the half. And Green Bay had no answer. The defense for Seattle really shut down Aaron Rodgers, and Eddie Lacy wasn't able to get going. I think that's when he went out with the injury that he had last night. And you could just definitely see where Seattle took it up to the next level. Now, my question is, and this is where some of the critics are going, who's the better player? I feel like it's Earl Thomas in that secondary in the Legion of Boom. I feel like Earl Thomas is the better player to Richard Sherman.
No, I agree with you. And again, I'll go back to my conversation that I had last night with Gooden. He said the same exact thing. He said that what the Seahawks defense does in terms of what they ask Earl Thomas to do is more than they ask Richard Sherman to do. Thomas comes down, and he can get down and dirty. He can cover. I'm 100% on board with you. Earl, and he hits. I think he's the hardest hitter on that defense. I am right on board with you. I think he is the best player in that secondary.
Now, the only thing I can say is if we improve his punt returning skills, then he's just the complete player, right?
Well, I think Pete Carroll needs to have his head examined, to be honest with you. There's no way I would throw Earl Thomas out there. I mean, years ago, didn't we learn anything with Jason Sehorn returning punts for the New York Giants that one year when he blew out his knee? I just don't understand why coaches, and now that you can carry 10 guys on your practice squad, why would you have a star like Earl Thomas returning punts?
That's a great question. Like you said, that's something that Pete Carroll needs to re-examine. Obviously, I liked how they fixed it. I don't think he was out there afterwards. They had somebody else out there. Yeah. But here's the thing, too, is now we talked about the Seahawks. Obviously, I think after last night, it's going to be very tough for anybody to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Do you see any team out there in the West that can take the division away from them? Perhaps, I know the 49ers are always in the conversation, but are the Cardinals there? Because the Cardinals went into Seattle last year and beat them.
Well, I would say yes, but suspension, they lost their best defensive player for the entire season to a second drug suspension. I just don't, I can't put my faith and my trust in a year older Carson Palmer. I just can't imagine Carson Palmer being able to go out there and beat the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers 3 out of 4 times, which is what's going to be required to win that division. I can't see it. The St. Louis Rams, I can't see that either. To be honest with you, it's going to come down to the Seattle-San Francisco matchups. I will tell you that I like the 49ers a little bit more this season, simply because I know their offense struggled in the preseason, but I look for that Colin Kaepernick, Anquan Bolden, Michael Crabtree, Vernon Davis, Frank Gore, and now Carlos Hyde. I think they're a little bit deeper on the offensive side of the football. I think it's going to matter in that division this year. I look for Colin Kaepernick to take that next step. I'll take the 49ers over the Seahawks in that division this year.
We're here with Alan Zlotorzynski of fanspeak.com. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at @ZLotSports. Great follow on Twitter. Oh, very interesting. I find it tough to pick the 49ers just because I feel like they've been there for so many years, 3 years, title games. They've been to the Super Bowl and lost. And, in the preseason, I kind of feel is a little bit of a fortune cookie to what your season's going to be. Do you still have a lot of faith in them even after this preseason?
I do, because they are, and I had an opportunity, a real good opportunity. I watched the 49ers up close and as personal as I could from the state of Florida. But they played the Ravens in the first preseason game. But what they did following that game was interesting, and a trend that's developing in the NFL during training camp, is they stuck around for 5 days in Baltimore, and they went head-to-head with the Ravens in scrimmages and practices, which I think is a great idea. And what I found in what I was able to break down was that rushing attack is going to be lethal this season. That Carlos Hyde, that Frank Gore combination is going to be amazing. I think Carlos Hyde has the potential to be your Rookie of the Year in the National Football League. I love everything this kid brings to the table, and I think he is going to be the difference maker for the 49ers this year. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if by the end of the season Carlos Hyde and Frank Gore were actually splitting time.
Well, and you got to imagine that they would. I think that's got to be San Francisco's plan because, Frank Gore is getting up in age, but having Frank Gore and Carlos Hyde and both mixing them up and giving each defense a different dose of both of those guys has got to be, Jim Harbaugh wants for the San Francisco 49er offense.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and maybe I'm a little partial because I am a Harbaugh guy, and I like Jim, I like John. But I just think that, and I hear what you're saying, 3 straight, trips to the NFC title game, a Super Bowl loss. But to me, it just appeared that in each season, last year it was Crabtree. He lost Crabtree to injury. Now, it's such a hard thing to say that with the presumption of health, because no team in the NFL, and when you do these preseason blogs and predictions, you just have to assume it's the presumption of health that's going to take place for this team. But given that, I just like their depth a little bit more on the offensive side of the football.
I can't disagree with you there. Like you said, San Francisco does have a lot of depth. But let's talk about a little bit about the other team that played last night, the Green Bay Packers. Now, unfortunately, I made the prediction that the Pack would be playing for a Super Bowl versus the Patriots. I know they didn't look good last night, but I still believe that Mike McCarthy will find a way to get things done. They always seem to start off slow the last couple of years. As long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy and they get maybe one guy to plug in that offensive line to keep him upright, and Eddie Lacy doesn't have too many concussion issues, are the Pack right there, and maybe we see a rematch come late December or January?
Yeah, I was a hair away from picking the Green Bay Packers to go to the Super Bowl. In fact, I liked what they did last night. Again, what a tough environment to have to go into and play. I don't think you're crazy at all, to be honest with you, because if you look at the first 2.5 quarters of that football game, I felt like the Green Bay Packers looked like, at least in that first quarter and a half, an excellent blueprint. And, a little bit more time throughout the NFL season, a little bit more competition. Again, the presumption of health, but That didn't happen last night. Balaga went down again, and then, of course, Eddie Lacy with the concussion. But if they can stay somewhat healthy, I don't think it's crazy at all to expect the Green Bay Packers to be in the NFC Championship game with Seattle.
Yeah, and like I said, and that's what I'm hoping for. Like you said, I agree with you. Every team needs to stay healthy, but you know what? Through 17 weeks, that never happens. So hopefully you just don't have any guys that are on the season-ending IR. Now, I saw that you were talking about quarterbacks around the NFL, every starter. What are some quarterbacks? Last year we saw a lot of great quarterbacks play. Do you see anybody taking a step back? Like, do we see an Andy Dalton not take the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs this year? Do we see Brian Hoyer step up this year? Or who are your quarterbacks that you see are going to take steps back this season and some that may take a step forward?
Well, I think Carson Palmer's a quarterback that's going to take a step back this season. I don't think it's necessarily going to be due to his play. I just think that the play in the NFC West is going to be that much better. I think you take a look over in the AFC. I think Ben Roethlisberger. I think he takes a step back this season. I don't think you can lose as many wideouts as Roethlisberger has lost. And look, I know that they've got some pretty good wideouts there, but you've got a lot of speed there. But a lot of what Pittsburgh does is underneath, between the hash marks on the field, and they have that running game with Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount. Bell has problems staying healthy. I don't know how you can expect Ben Roethlisberger to take a step forward, continuing to lose weapons. His tight end is another year older. So I would say Ben Roethlisberger takes a step back. I expect Andy Dalton to elevate his game, to be honest with you. I like the Cincinnati Bengals. I like them a lot coming into this season. Phillip Rivers, I don't expect him to take a step back. I expect him to elevate his game a little bit. In fact, one of my sleeper top 5 wide receivers in the National Football League resides in San Diego, and that's Keenan Allen. I think he's due to have a fantastic year this year. I think he and Phillip Rivers are going to develop a special chemistry there. I'm not sure about Alex Smith in Kansas City. I don't think the Chiefs are a playoff team this year. Therefore, I'd have to say Alex Smith takes a step back. In terms of the elite quarterbacks, you look at the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Bradys of the world. Well, I think Tom Brady takes a nice step up this season. You look at what happened to Tom Brady last year. He threw 156 passes to rookie wide receivers last year. That was 35 more than any other quarterback in the National Football League last year. He doesn't have to do that this season. Hopefully he gets a healthy Rob Gronkowski for 16 games. They went out and they got the tight end from Tampa Bay in there to kind of reset that 2 tight end system that Belichick likes to run. As long as Stephen Ridley can hang on to the football, I think great things are going to happen for the Patriots. So I expect Tom Brady to take a step up.
Now, talking about the Florida teams here with, obviously we in Jacksonville, they've got Chad Henne starting for most of these games, and they also have Blake Bortles playing. You got Ryan Tannehill that needs to show up. And then the question marks over in Tampa Bay, what kind of version of Josh McCown are we going to get? What are your thoughts on all 3 of those quarterbacks right now in the situations that they're in?
Well, let me say this. One of the national fantasy games, and true story, heard it on the John Feinstein show this morning. Tim Tebow was drafted more than Chad Henne. Okay?
I heard the same thing.
Okay? I mean, still, to this day, there were more people in this league that drafted Tim Tebow than drafted Chad Henne. Now, I would imagine that's an auto pick. People walk away from the computers or, selecting, making sure, but I don't know. But I think that says something. And let me say this. If the fact that Gus Bradley and company don't have Blake Bortles starting bothers me. It bothers me the same that Teddy Bridgewater isn't starting in Minnesota. To me, if you draft a quarterback in the first round and he's not playing, it's a mistake. And I think it's a mistake the Jacksonville Jaguars are making by not starting Blake Bortles. No disrespect to Chad Henne, no disrespect to Matt Castle, no disrect to Brian Hoyer. But Johnny Manziel, Blake Bortles, and Teddy Bridgewater should all be starting quarterbacks. And Blake Bortles, think about this. If Blake Bortles goes out there and gets 16 games under his belt this season, and you have to pull him out every once in a while, calm him down, maybe boost his confidence a little bit. He's a rookie quarterback. That's going to happen. But the Jaguars are going to be a better football team this time next year because Blake Bortles played this year. Chad Henne is not the future of this football team. I don't think that Chad Henne does anything for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Here's the only thing, and I like the decision, though, where I disagree with you, is that the decision is to sit Bortles, because I like the idea of at least allowing a quarterback the chance to kind of learn, because it's a totally different speed. Now there's both cases for and against starting and sitting, obviously, like you've alluded to already. I just feel like with Jacksonville's schedule, I think with the amount of tough teams that they're going to be playing and their offensive line, they do have a little bit of talent there. I still think Blake Bortles would be running for his life way too much to be doing something positive for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're still a rebuilding project, but like you said, you get that experience. The same thing with Teddy Bridgewater, and I kind of feel like with Johnny Manziel, he didn't exactly take the job, so I'm not sure with that Cleveland situation, but that thing has been mishandled the entire way.
Right. No, you're 100% right. And here's the thing there, and that's a great point you make about that Jaguars offensive line. And I had an opportunity to in a conference call type of a way to pick head coach Brian Billick's mind a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that he pointed out about that Jaguars offensive line was what gives Jacksonville the best chance, or which quarterback is going to give the Jaguars the best chance to make a play behind a broken down play or a broken down offensive line. And he was right in pointing out that Bortles probably has the better feet there. So, I agree with what you're saying, because you don't want to get this guy killed, or you don't want to absolutely shatter his confidence. But I think if you take a look at what they went out and drafted, Allen Robinson, Marquise Lee, and they already have Cecil Shorts there. I mean, they have the makings in Jacksonville. And I said this the other day, and people, I was called every idiot in the book for saying this, but in 2 to 3 years' time, you could potentially be looking at something very similar to what the Rams put out in the late 90s. You look at all the speed in the hands that team is going to have, and a Blake Bortles, I just kind of felt like, let's get that chemistry going right now.
No, I agree. And like you said, both points made for it. Like I said, I totally agree with you, though. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville's going to be very, very dangerous in 2 to 3 years' time. I love Gus Bradley being the head coach there. Yeah. He's a great defensive mind, and they're doing good things on offense. But the other question is how do you feel about the Bucs quarterback situation? You have Glennon, who was a starter last year, showed promise. Now he's being benched for Josh McCown. Josh McCown being a journeyman that he is, put up great numbers for 5 games. What's the Bucs situation look like at quarterback? Do you think Josh McCown can maybe be a Pro Bowler this year or take the Bucs to a wild card berth?
No, I look. I like the Bucs as a sneaky good team, 9-7, 10-6. Not sure that 9-7 gets it done in the NFC this year. I like it because I think that Lovie Smith goes in and improves that defense enough. Look, we know where they finished last season, but I think Doug Martin has a bounce-back season. Yes, Josh McCown put up great numbers for 5 games in Chicago last year. What was it, 13, 14, or 15 touchdowns and 1 interception? That's great for Mark Trestman, because what he's able to do and what he did do was sit down and show Jay Cutler what he needs and the type of quarterback he needs to become in that system. But I'm not so sure. I mean, my opinion is I kind of felt like that. I thought that Glennon did enough last season to come back in and maybe start the year as the quarterback here.
We're here with Alan Zlotorzynski of fanspeak.com. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at @ZLotSports. Great follow on Twitter. No, I agree. I saw him during a couple training camp practices, and he looks solid. He looks like he's doing well. And like I said, obviously the Lovie Smith feels like he's trying to win now, and they want to get to the playoffs. So maybe next year Glennon gets that shot under a year under Jeff Tedford's system. What about Ryan Tannehill, though, in Miami? Do you see Tannehill breaking away and being that franchise quarterback that Miami is praying for right now?
I think that Tannehill is a franchise quarterback. Whether he can break away in Miami or not, I don't know. When you get sacked 58 times in 1 year, that's Ouch. A beating. That is just a beatdown. You've got a revamped offensive line. You've got a rookie starting at right tackle. Look, I was critical of the Dolphins' first-round pick because I felt like that reaching that high to get Jawan Jameson was a reach. I felt like they maybe could have traded back and maybe got maybe 2 offensive linemen for the price of 1 there. But a lot's going to depend on the play of that offensive line. Quarterbacks can't make plays laying down. To that, I would also say that I'm not a big Joe Philbin fan. I really felt like last season with just nearly a game to win, all they needed to do was win 1 game, and they could only muster 7 points. in 2 games against the Bills and the Jets was disgusting to me. And I really don't know any other way to describe that, but it was ridiculous that they couldn't get the job done. The fact that Jeff Ireland was fired and Joe Philbin was allowed to stay after that Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin situation last year, I just felt like that, you know what, there's still a big part of the mess there. And that big part of the mess that remains, in my opinion, is Joe Philbin. So I don't know that Ryan Tannehill takes a step forward this year. I certainly think he has the talent to do it, but I'm just not a Philbin fan.
No, that's understandable, and I agree with you. I think Philbin is a big part of that mess. I was very surprised that he was not given the pink slip as Jeff Ireland was. A couple questions here. I know you're a busy man. What are the most intriguing matchups for you this weekend for the NFL schedule?
Well, I tell you, and this is a game that's kind of off the radar a little bit, but I'm interested to watch that Washington-Houston game, the Houston Texans and the Washington Redskins. I want to see what Jay Gruden has done with that Redskins offense in RG3. I want to see if he's RG3 or RG me this year. This is a guy that a couple of years ago, last season, I think he ran the football 86 times. He's got to get down into the 50s. He's got to learn to be a pocket passer. Can Jay Gruden make that happen? And on the flip side of the coin, what about the Houston Texans? I'm excited to see Jadeveon Clowney, play with J.J. Watt, who just signed a new $100 million contract. I'm interested and intrigued to see what Bill O'Brien has done with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then how quick of a hook will O'Brien have now that he's won out and traded for Ryan Mallett from the New England Patriots? And when will Tom Savage from Pittsburgh get his crack under center there? So that's one of the games I think that could be a really good matchup this weekend. Obviously, another one is going to be the Denver Broncos and the Indianapolis Colts. I wouldn't be surprised if Peyton Manning goes out and absolutely destroys the Indianapolis Colts. That doesn't mean that the Indianapolis Colts are going to be a bad football team this year. It just means that when Peyton Manning went home last year, home to Indianapolis, he didn't get the victory on the night that they honored him. I think that doesn't sit well with a guy like Peyton Manning. If last season against the Ravens, in the first game of the year, he threw 7 touchdown passes, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him duplicate that. I'm also interested to see how my Baltimore Ravens come out of the gate with new offensive coordinator Gary Kubiak. The Ravens come out of the preseason. They were number 1 in the NFL rushing the football. Surprisingly, they were the number 1 defense in the preseason. They had the number 1 rusher in Lorenzo Taliaferro there, the rookie out of East Carolina. So I'm interested to see how the Ravens get out of the gate with this new zone blocking scheme against the Cincinnati Bengals and Andy Dalton. I'm equally as intrigued to see how Andy Dalton, who's 8-10 against the AFC North and never won in Baltimore, does now that he has this big contract. So those are some of the games that are on my radar this weekend.
And great games indeed, all ones that we're going to be keeping an eye on. My final question for you, and now we're going to take a little detour off the NFL, but this weekend in college football is a lot of great matchups, and one of them is the Oregon versus Michigan State game. We're going to see that speed from Oregon against that defense from Michigan State. I just want to get your thoughts on that game and possibly the Notre Dame-Michigan game. That's going to be the final match between those two teams for a long time. What do you think about these two night games that are going to be going on Saturday?
I'm probably going to have a Saturday like your buddy Mark Moses had last week, where it's 10 hours of straight nothing but sitting around the house watching football. I'm excited about this. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Oregon, Marcus Mariota, I love watching that offense play. Look, Michigan State's got a great defense. There's no question about it. But I don't know, going up against this offense in the second game of the season, that they're going to be prepared for what they're going to see. I think Oregon wins this game, and I think they win it big. As far as Michigan and Notre Dame, I don't know. Look, I think it's going to be an ugly football game. I definitely think that. But if I had to lay the chips on the table here, I'd go all in on Notre Dame.
Not bad. I was going to say, I was actually quite surprised. I think this game is going to be a very big toss-up. Both games, I think, could be toss-up. But like you said, the Michigan State Spartans have to worry about that Oregon quick attack, and then the Irish and the Wolverines. Well, we'll really find out what team's going to show up and which team's actually going to be good for the rest of the season. Alan, I really appreciate you coming on. And once again, everyone, you can follow him on @ZlotSports on Twitter, and you can definitely check him out on fanspeak.com and all his blogs and podcasts. Always great information that Alan puts out there. And Alan, I definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast with me today, and I hope to get you on again soon.
Hey, anytime, I'm always available, and we're going to have to get you on as a guest on one of these podcasts, so I certainly appreciate it.
Alrighty, guys, that was Alan Zlotorzynski of fanspeak.com. Check him out on Twitter at ZLotSports. Great follow on Twitter, great knowledge on the NFL and all things football. Like I said, really great guy, and I really appreciate him coming on the Knock On Sports podcast. A lot of fun talking with him. Like I said, we'll see what happens. We'll see Blake Bortles towards the end of the season, and like I said, I really hope that my Super Bowl prediction's right. We'll see. I won't win any money in Vegas, but it should be interesting to say the least. I think the Packers are going to be a lot better than what they showed last night. But here are my Week 1 picks. Before we get out of here, I won last night with the Seattle Seahawks. I have the Atlanta Falcons upsetting the New Orleans Saints. I have the Minnesota Vikings taking down the St. Louis Rams. I have the Cleveland Browns defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Not sure the last time that happened. I have Philadelphia beating the Jaguars. I have the Jets over the Oakland Raiders. I have the Cincinnati Bengals taking down Baltimore. I have the Chicago Bears defeating the Buffalo Bills. I have the Washington Redskins taking down the Houston Texans. The Kansas City Chiefs toppling the Tennessee Titans. The New England Patriots, Tom Brady. Brady's the Dolphins again, and they get the W. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are led by Josh McCown. They get the W over the Cam Newton rib of the Carolina Panthers. The San Francisco 49ers win a shootout when they play Dallas. And I have the Indianapolis Colts defeating the Denver Broncos. Peyton Manning goes home frustrated once again. I also have the Detroit Lions toppling the New York Giants. And I have the San Diego Chargers electrifying the Arizona Cardinals. That'll be the final game on Monday night. Like I said, an exciting Week 1. A lot of great matchups. We're going to get a lot of questions answered. The 2013 versions of all these teams is behind us now. The 2014 version is in front. It should be really exciting to say the least. And I'm looking forward to it. So remember, guys, you can also check me out at the Knock On Sports 959 on Twitter. I'll be covering a lot of high school sports, college, and pros throughout the weekend. And make sure you check us out at the Broken Barrel Tavern every Saturday for Gator games. Myself, Mark Moses, will be out there at the Broken Barrel Tavern, joining you Gator fans out there, watching Gators football. Hopefully we get one this weekend on Saturday. Should be really exciting. Like I said, guys, a lot of fun today, and I'd like to thank Alan Zlotorzynski once again for coming on the show and just dropping a wealth of knowledge from the NFL on the show here, and I really appreciate it. That's going to do it for us here on the Knock On Sports podcast. I am your host, Anthony Nachreiner. I really appreciate you coming on and listening to the podcast, and like I said, I'd like to thank Alan Zlotorzynski one more time. And this is the Knock On Sports. I'm Knock, and I'm knocking out.